segue. There is, since last year, maybe the year before, there has been something going on called the prophecy of Elam, which basically says that, it's bandied about by the Zionists with books and stuff, picking up stuff from Bible, saying, oh, Elam needs to be hit where its people will need to be burdened upon the whole world, after which then, that's what's in the Bible, it says, whence it becomes a burden, the Elami people becomes a burden upon the whole world, after which God reestablishes his throne in Elam. That's what's there. If you read the books, check up something called The Prophecies of Elam.
Okay.
Now, what they are saying is, okay, Iran must be hit, the Elam area, our area.
Oh.
Maybe we should hit Bushara or whatever, and just basically nuclear the whole
Really?
area. So we can get the Elami people as a burden on the whole world. But
making them refugees.
Yes.
I see.
But that has already happened.
Well, wasn't there also the extermination using chemical weapons?
Yes, that's us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have already been done that. That
Yes.
was already ticked since 1980.
Right.
So.
And wasn't I don't know exactly, but wasn't the United States supplying some of this chemical weapons? I mean, wasn't it Saddam who carried this out? Or was it Iran?
No. The stockpile from some European countries, including Germany, was flown to Iraq to take it. It was flown to Israel, and from Israel, Jordan, and from Jordan they took it all.
But who actually carried out this chemical sort of extermination? There was a...
Yes, what you have to... Okay. Every time we talk about politics, especially in the Middle East, if you do not put in the religious, bring the apocalypse on,
yes,
you are missing 2/3 of the picture.
Okay.
And whoever doesn't do that, let's put it this way: the things that's taking place is religion. Even when the magicians are doing anything, they are, because that's the religion.
Sure.
Okay. So everything you talk about in the Middle East, from the 1900s onwards, it's all religious.
Yes.
But they cannot put a religious point on it because they are trying to push in things like communism, which says there is no God. So they have to cover it with a non-religious doctrine. And non-religious doctrine would be whatever they want to put in, whatever works during that time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you keep peeling, you get the Zionists, that's a religion. Peel away, you've got behind them the magician. Peel away, you've got the Satanists. Peel away, you see? Mm-hmm. Every time you peel away, there's something else under it.
Sure.
And then you go in and peel away the last one, you'll find that there are 9 families who are running everything. Okay? Then you put, once you've got 9 families, you peel away, then you have all the ETs. You
Yes.
see? Even when you peel away the ETs, right? Who's behind them? Right? You've got the Patel. Again, the good guys.
Okay.
So why is that? We can go over. Why, at the end of the day, these guys were left to do what they want to do? We can go through that, and we can go through as we go through the Patel, we're going to go through where we are, what's happening with Elamis, why Elam is what's happening. And Elam is not Iran, by the way, it's also south of Iraq.
Right. Okay. All right. This is, it's very involved, and there are many directions we can go here because I have certain information in this regard that, I want to bring forward and connect with what you're going to be saying or what you have to say. But I also understand that the viewers may not have as much patience as I do, for example. And so what we want to do is we're going to jump into your material now, and then we're going to come back and circle back, and hopefully I can ask you some of these other extraneous questions, and that the people that want to hang on through the end of the video will get more deeper discussions, about this particular area and what's really going on in the Middle East. I want to talk about stargates, et cetera. Okay.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Okay. So, but at this moment, we're going to sort of do a segue. Okay. So we're going to do a segue, and we're going to go to. You've given me a presentation.
Yes.
Of material, and in a certain sense, this interview is actually focused on this particular material that's going to be posted as a presentation where you can download and look at all of the slides, and it's something like 40 pages, over 40 pages
44
long.
pages.
44 pages. And it includes science and some of the step-by-step information so that people can, read along and decide what they want to investigate further, what they, maybe question, et cetera, et cetera. So we do have that accompanying this. Okay, so I want to say that. And it was beautifully done by yourself. And then, but to bridge into this discussion, you contacted me, I'm assuming, because of this material. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you feel in a certain sense a responsibility of some kind towards releasing this information to the world?
Yes, because I had this information for a while, but it was not because people like me have a tendency to know if certain things, if certain actions will have results or not. Foresee. And I did not foresee that my results, my information will take traction, will have traction. But
Okay,
now
but
I foresee that
Yes.
my actions will have traction.
Okay.
Because if information is given before its time, the information will be turned around and will become negative. So that you always need to present information at the time when it is more positive, as opposed to go negative.
Okay. Now, to get back to your background so that people understand that you really do have, you have emphasis in your life on science, you have emphasis on religion or religious studies,
Yes.
and you also have a background in banking, isn't that correct?
Yes, I worked in the majority of the main banks. I've worked since the beginning of 2000. I worked with UBS, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, anyone you can think of, clearing houses. I worked in areas which nobody knows that exist, and I was privileged, unknowingly to the humanity, to be able to handle the wealth of this planet without people knowing that I'm able to do that. So
Okay.
I had access to direct, unhindered, unsurpassed access to trillions of dollars, where even untraceable, they couldn't be traced. But I did my duty. It was a test to me. Here is all the cash in the world. Nobody would know what you're doing. Will you be able to manage it? And I have to say I passed. I basically said, this is not my money. I am here a caretaker, and I do everything possible because I'm under contract. And I will ensure that everything is done according to what I have agreed with.
Okay, but what was your capacity, if we were to ask you, what was your actual title in these places?
Consultant.
Consultant.
Banking consultant.
Okay. And were you employed, because you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you think I'm wrong, but we understand that the Rothschilds own 99% of the banks. So were they employing you?
No, they don't own 99% of the banks.
Okay.
Their names is on 99% of the banks.
Right.
And I have no connection to any of the families.
Okay.
I just go through the normal procedure of, you have a technician, you have a mathematician, you have somebody who has a project management experience, and they bring you in to assist in problem solving issues. Things are collapsing, things are happening. So in transition period, and I'm brought in. But whether I'm brought in to assist, to move on, let's say, new systems, new banking system, new rules, new legislative what's called new legislations that require some input into the risk management, into the custodian management, into the reporting aspect. So see, these are very technical, banking technical stuff.
Okay, but you weren't just there. I mean, you're saying you handled trillions of dollars, but you weren't there to count it.
No, but when you're there, for example, if you are in the loans department,
Yes.
where this bank has transacted with this bank with a missing, overnight it needs $10 million or $100 million but it will come, 2 days time.
Mm-hmm.
So you need then to have established some kind of a loans desk where other members will be happy to loan their funds to assist in the overnight transaction. So then you have access to their funds. So everybody gives you access to all their funds.
Okay.
And you can start creating new funds if you want to, new banks, new whatever.
And so I'm guessing because of you also had expertise with software.
Yes.
This was
This
part
comes
of why,
together.
because money works.
Yes. So
in that
now we, fortunately or unfortunately, physicists and mathematicians now do the work of accountants. So there is no more accountants per se in banking.
Okay.
Accountancy is not used anymore in banking. Mainly physicists and mathematicians. And I was a physicist and mathematician, and I had quite extensive computing background experience and project management, and I don't need much guidance to... I'm a one-man band, basically. One-man show. They can put things moving forward. If a team of 20 or 30 or 40 people needs to come on board, they will come on board. Do whatever. I do my job and leave.
Okay. From this perspective, though, here you are about to release some what someone would say is highly controversial information.
Yes.
And you have this background in banking.
Yes.
I assume, do you feel that there will be any impact on you, we can even address the political impact on your family, on your banking, ability to do
Yes,
banking?
well, before coming out, I had to... I made a decision. I told the family that I'm not going to get involved in banking anymore.
Oh.
It's after the TARP money has come out, which is basically it ensured that there is no more real business dealings between the banks. There is no more financial risk between banks, because all risk now is directly between the bank and the government, or the bank and the central bank. So if they need any fund, they go direct to the central bank, not to each other again, not to each other. So there is no more something called financing. Once the fact financing disappeared between interbanking, it meant it became a mafia, basically. If you're not already in there, you cannot get in there. And the financing then is given by the central bank, and the central bank prints money on behalf of the people. So therefore, the banks are making profit on behalf. They're keeping the profit using the people's money. Once that firmed up 2 years ago, that became, that became semi-official. I basically could not see if I can, any penny I earn from working in banking is a legal one, and morally I just had to leave. I left.
Okay, is this because of the changing in the financial system and orchestration, so to speak, in what's about to happen? Yes.
Because now the financial system is no longer, it doesn't follow the supply-demand model. It has become mainly to clear up the funds between the West and the East. And it is made to overcome any taxation issues or between the different countries. So they're using all these... I was involved in a lot of transactions where they're using instruments. These instruments hide the transaction to stop it from accumulating tax or or duties as it goes between the different countries.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have a level of flow of money which has nothing to do with countries. And
What does it have to do with?
good point. You said that the money is Rothschild. Yes, it's the name Rothschild.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If I were to tell you that the poorest people are the ones that are in the families, they are the poorest of all the people, and whoever is attached to them are also poor. What is my definition of poor is something that you do not own yourself. And in order to be part of the hierarchy and the family system, you have to link in all your wealth with that system. In order to do that, they use something called trust. The trust system, where I put my money into a trust.
Mm-hmm.
And no longer then are you the owner, the legal owner
Mm-hmm.
of the money and the funds, and the trust dispense funds onto you. That's why when people have been into those families and run away, they have nothing. Have you noticed that? They have nothing. They come in and they physically do not carry anything. They cannot go in and pull the money out of the bank, or even the clothes that they're wearing, that's all they have when they run away. Is because the allocation of the wealth is put in a legal capacity that is not theirs. So, for example, when the Rockefellers came in at the end of 19th century and were joined with the JP Morgans, the primary requirement for Rockefeller was that all his wealth goes into a trust when he dies, and the trust is run by them. And his family then receive funding from the trust. So as soon as Rockefeller died, his children no longer owned anything. So they are then subservient to the trust owners. Now, who are the trust owners? They are the same people who also have their own funding, money, legally given to that trust. So it's like an invisible entity. So nobody actually owns anything.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are, for example, a doctor, if you are a person and your family pays for you and you go in and you become a doctor, and the doctor goes in and you open a practice, every penny you get is your money. But if you go through that system where they actually, through the education system, where they make you have all the education and they will support you and they put you the head of this hospital or whatever, in order to be part of this, you have to give all your money to them, and you have a trust that gives you the money in order not to be taxed. That's what they're duping them with.
Uh-huh.
But then, as soon as that happens, that person is no longer owning any of his the things that he is working with. All of the real assets have gone to the trust,
Mm-hmm.
and he just becomes subservient. He cannot get out of it. So, if we then go back and say, okay, a person, let's use as an example. This is practical example. I'm just putting practicality here.
Mm-hmm.
You have a Jewish doctor who was helped by his family to go up, and he became a GP, or a general practitioner. You have another Jewish person who used his connection to become the head of the establishment. The Jewish practitioner, doctor, who uses family, he owns his money. The other one who uses the network, he doesn't own his money. So if he doesn't own the money, what is he? He's poor. Everyone in that establishment have no access to their funds. They do not carry cash, they have no cars, whatever. Everything is done and they are just following a road.
But they draw upon it.
Only if they follow the rules.
Right.
So now they are trapped into that system.
Okay.
So you have a whole lineage of people and everyone around them who are trapped into this system where actually no one owns anything.
Okay. But, okay, so to get back to this sort of, because it's, of course, very interesting and educational, I'm sure, for some, but to focus on this, we're kind of going in a row.
We can go straight
Down
in.
the
I
road.
can go in. Okay.
Okay, so we want to go into this area of what's happening, because you came forward again. You don't feel that you have sort of divorced yourself from your banking background. Was it with the idea that you wanted to come forward with this information that made you, not only what happened in banking, which you sort
No,
of
in banking
described.
that was a small part. The
Okay.
other part is I was actively dealing with trying to get. Every time I was dealing with Iraq, with the funding to go into Iraq, with all the big banks and whatever, we always hit upon the same issue, which is the creditworthiness of Iraq, the risk factor. Because when you deal with banking, you have to provide a risk factor.
Okay.
And every time you do a risk factor, this thing keeps coming up, the sovereign rating of the country, which is how risky is that country. I then dealt with the upper echelons of the government at the highest level for many years, trying to educate them the fact that it does not matter how much oil you have in the ground. If you do not have a credit worthiness and have a credit rating for sovereign credit rating, then that is worthless. You must have credit worthiness outside so funding can come in. You must provide something externally for money to come in as guarantees. They cannot rely on you promising them to get the money, to get the oil out. So I dealt extensively trying with the large banks, trying to put forward ideas, including sovereign, what's called, different investments, sovereign investments that they can put in order to assist in that area. There was also the problem that once you have an explosive amount of exports, you have a huge amount of revenue coming into the country, and if you do not manage it properly, it will provide hyperinflation and it will kill the lower population because the prices will go up, but the limited income people will not be able to afford it. So while this has not happened yet, we need to manage the issue of releasing the money into the country, right? As sovereign.
Okay.
When I realized the fact that there were blocks keep happening, they were blocked every time you go in and try to establish this, something blocks it, and
Yes.
I realized that there was a hidden hand behind it,
Okay.
and I could trace then who was blocking it. You see,
Okay. And who was blocking it?
whoever manages the central banks. Okay, whoever manages central banks is
So in other words, are you saying that they didn't I would like to know how many years this has been going on.
7 years.
Okay, for the last 7 years, you're saying that Iraq couldn't establish itself as a credit-worthy country
Yes.
for investment, outside investment,
Yes.
as a result of this block that was happening.
Yes, because the block was these things happen through the central bank, and the central bank was set up and managed by J.P. Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, J.P. Morgan was using it has a group, one of the Turkish banks and Canadian banks and whatever, to support Iraq's worthiness outside.
Right.
As part of the first change of government, there was also change of money system.
Mm-hmm.
In 2003, when the Americans came in, they brought J.P. Morgan with them. Now, J.P. Morgan makes money out of flowing, the Iraqi funds going into their accounts, flowing back again, with the transaction cost being put on top of that. The transaction cost goes up, the lesser creditworthy you are. The more creditworthy you are, the less transaction costs you can put, the less you can siphon off. This is like billions, hundreds of billions, up to approximately now, which will be approximately $1 trillion, that they've just gone through this. Would you think that the banks who are managing this have a vested interest to have a credit-worthy Iraq?
No.
No. Okay. So then everything was placed to block the change happening in Iraq. That's why Iraq could not move forward. They could not, for the last 7 years, they cannot move forward because the banks who are supposed to be looking after the Iraqi funds are at least not encouraging Iraq to be creditworthy. Let's put it this way.
But at least also getting a certain portion of payoffs, so to speak, or a siphoning off to go into their pockets directly so that they have no vested interest in this. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they have to, but the next step would be, what do you do with the sovereign wealth funds? The next step would be to go to sovereign wealth funds to manage the account funds. I had no problem, even JP Morgan and various others, to take over these sovereign wealth funds if they need be, to move on to the next step. So they siphon off from another legal entity, side. So it becomes a win-win scenario. What we do as a family, we always look for win-win. That's why we're not interested in difference. Tell me what you agree, Let's move it to the next step. If you want to continue with the next step being on, fine. Let's have a win-win scenario. So I don't have an issue with JP Morgan, various other people to come in and have a win-win on this. Take over the sovereign funds, right, but give creditworthiness to it.
Okay, but there is still a block.
There is a block.
Okay, now why is there a block? Do we know? Beyond the money.
Iraq was not supposed to...
Does it have anything to do with the Stargate? Does it have anything to do with the original reason that the U.S. went in there to begin with?
Okay. There's a lot of information which you will not be aware of, I have to say.
Yes.
Okay. Part of going into Iraq specifically was not the fact that they just wanted to have technology. That's a nice to have. But you have to remember that you are dealing with religious people.
Mm-hmm.
When I mean religious, it doesn't mean they believe in God. They believe in some kind of theology.
Mm-hmm.
And the theology that they believe in has been written, some of it in the Bible.
Right.
The Old Testament. And in the Old Testament there is a reference that prior to this happening, the Babylon has to be resurrected or defeated. And even if you look on the Quran side, the Islamic side, it does say that when you grow, you defeat those who broke you before, meaning the Babylonians. So there is a drive to tick that box. And that box is, we must kick the butt of Iraq.
Right.
Or actually not Iraq, of Babylon.
Right.
But who carries the torch for Babylon at that time? Iraq. So they have to kick the butt of Iraq. It's like it's a box that has to be ticked. Okay? That's why you see them drive to do something but not clearing it up afterwards. There is a drive to kick butt.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no drive what to do next. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
Why is that? It's because the butt kicking
It's part of the scenario for Armageddon.
Yes.
Yes.
So there has to be butt kicking whoever is Babylon.
Okay.